Number 10. Shoebill stork. The shoebill stork is undoubtedly the rarest and strangest of all the birds. For one thing, it's huge. It's probably taller than your mailbox, boasting an impressive 8-foot wingspan and standing over 4.5 feet tall. This enormous prehistoric bird has a massive bill it uses for eating fish. In fact, the shoebill stork is also known as the whale-headed stork because of its bizarre size. But they are not actually storks. They have their own classification because they are so unique. They use their bills for eating, of course, but also to make all kinds of loud clacking noises. This almost could have been a pelican, but at some point in its evolution it took a different path. Surprisingly, the shoebill stork can live to be around 35 years old. Seems quite a long time for such a big bird, right? But you are very unlikely to ever see one in the wild. The bird is classified as vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. According to them, there are only 3,000 to 5,000 shoebills left in their native wetlands of Central and East Africa. The population is in a steep decline due to habitat loss and disturbance by humans, not to mention the illegal bird trade. What do you think of this giant bird? Is it cool? Ugly? Intimidating? Let me know in the comments below. Number 9. Amur Leopard. Most people think leopards live specifically in Africa, but this is not true. The Amur leopard makes its home in the east of Russia. It has adapted to living in the temperate forests and now thrives in the cold regions of the Far East. Just like other leopards, this one can run at astounding speeds, reaching up to 37 miles per hour. It has also been reported to leap up to 10 feet vertically and up to 19 feet horizontally, making it one of the best jumpers in the world. Unlike other animals, the male Amur leopards have been known to stay with their female mates even after breeding. Some even help with raising the young cubs. In the wild, these leopards can live anywhere between 10 and 15 years, but in captivity they can live over 20 years. Other names for the Amur leopard include the Far East leopard, the Korean leopard, and the Manchurian leopard. Unfortunately, this is another rare animal that is hardly seen anywhere on Earth. The World Wildlife Foundation has marked them as critically endangered, with a measly population of just around 80. This spectacular leopard could be erased off the face of the Earth sooner rather than later. Number 8. Hainan black-crested gibbon. It's difficult to see monkeys in the forest. It's even more difficult to spot primates in the wild. But if you want an even greater challenge, just try and find a Hainan black-crested gibbon. This is the world's rarest primate, only weeks, months, or even a year away from being extinct. Out of all of the 504 primate species, this one is the rarest and most vulnerable. You can only find this gibbon at the southern tip of China, living on a tropical island confined to a tiny patch of forest. In this little area they call home, there are about 25 gibbons left. That is not a lot. In fact, even the other 19 recognised species of gibbons, which live scattered throughout Southeast Asia, are either endangered or critically endangered, with the exception of only one. Not only is the Hainan black-crested gibbon at the edge of oblivion as the rarest primate, but it's also one of the rarest mammals of all time. You remember that tiny patch of forest they live in? Well, it's less than 2 square miles. Imagine if there were only 25 people left on Earth and they all lived in the same apartment complex. That's exactly what this is like. Unless you manage to book a trip to this island, you will never behold one of these incredible primates with your own 2 eyes. Number 7. Black-eyed leaf frog. Primates and big cats are not the only animals that are elusive and extremely rare. The black-eyed leaf frog is a tiny amphibian that you are very unlikely to run into at any point in time. However, its situation is not as dire as it used to be. This little frog lives in Latin America, from Mexico all the way through Central America. And while it was on the red list of critically endangered species just 10 years ago, it has since been removed from any such list. It's now not anywhere close to being extinct. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, researchers have found this leaf frog thriving in a bunch of new locations and multiplying in extremely high numbers. It seems that this little frog is rebounding back from the brink of no return, and you can now find them hanging out in lots of different areas of the jungle, primarily in Guatemala. Still, that doesn't mean you're going to see one of these elusive frogs on your next jungle outing. They are so small and so green that it's unlikely you would see one if it were right in front of you sitting on a leaf. What separates these frogs from others is their huge black eyes that look like pure black marbles. Number 6. Greater bamboo lemur. The greater bamboo lemur is the biggest of all the bamboo lemurs. It was first discovered in 1870 and was believed to have gone extinct even before the beginning of the 20th century. However, the greater bamboo lemur was discovered a second time in 1972. It came back from the void of no return. This is one of the only mammals in the world that primarily eats bamboo. The lemur is totally dependent on its bamboo food source, and so it lives a pretty lazy life, spending almost all of its time nibbling away in the forest. The biggest problem is that as such a specialised animal, the greater bamboo lemur can't just change its habitat. It's an extremely basic animal that has evolved over 60 million years to live on the island of Madagascar eating nothing but bamboo. As you can imagine, as the forests of Madagascar are quickly cleared, as illegal logging and mining cuts down the bamboo and burns down the forest, the greater bamboo lemur is forced deeper and deeper into seclusion. This is not a very populous animal. You definitely won't find it roaming freely from branch to branch, but they're not gone yet. Number 5. Pika. One look at the pika and you know without a doubt it was the inspiration for the famous Pokemon mascot Pikachu. Give this little mammal a yellow paint job and I guarantee it could shoot lightning out of its butt. But there is no other creature quite like it. The pika lives in the mountains of western North America and all throughout Asia. And even though they look like rats or mice, pikas are not rodents. They are the smallest types of lagomorphs. The only other animals inside the lagomorph family are hares and rabbits. That means the pika is the smallest and strangest rabbit on Earth. It kind of looks like a furry egg. And guess what? There are 29 different species of pika. They have long fur, they are super soft, and they also have very furry feet. But unlike rabbits and hares, they don't have long forelimbs for jumping. The reason you will never see a pika is because they are so tiny. A typical pika only weighs about 7 ounces and is only about 6 inches in length. They also live very secluded lives, making their nests inside the nooks and crannies of rock piles. They construct burrows and spend most of their time hanging out in deep underground labyrinths. Number 4. Darwin's Fox. Darwin's finches are probably his most famous animal. However, there was another creature that helped Charles Darwin develop his incredible theory of evolution, and it's now referred to as Darwin's Fox. The story comes from December in 1832. Charles Darwin was only 1 year into his famous research expedition aboard the HMS Beagle. He was in the middle of scrambling up an embankment on the coast of a small Chilean island when he discovered a little grey fox watching him. The fox was much different than their relatives on the mainland of Chile. This one was also the first that he had ever seen. Darwin caught the animal, created a scientific record of it, and decided it was a new species in 1837. Its proper name is Lycalopex fulvipes, but it is better known as Darwin's fox. Fast forward 200 years and we still hardly know anything about this fox. It is extremely rare. Recent scientific discoveries revealed that Darwin's fox also inhabits a few forested regions on the mainland of Chile. However, the International Union for Conservation of Nature has classified the species as endangered, claiming that there are fewer than 1,000 of them left in the world. What makes their story of potential extinction slightly different than the usual is that their main threat comes from dogs. Domestic dogs often hunt and kill the smaller foxes, and so they are having a difficult time keeping their numbers up, which is a real shame, as this is one of the most adorable and most unique foxes you will never see. Number 3. Peruvian black spider monkey. The Peruvian black spider monkey makes its home in the Amazon forest of Brazil, Bolivia and Peru. And while many monkeys are having a difficult time with the destruction of their habitats, the Peruvian spider monkey is having a worse time than the rest. It's been endangered since 2014 and is heavily trafficked as an illegal pet. This is hardly surprising considering how unique and adorable, or ugly, depending on who you are, the monkey is. They typically live in groups of about 35 monkeys, but it's almost impossible to find a gathering that large in the jungle anymore, seeing as there are not many of them left. What we do know is that the Peruvian black spider monkey enjoys eating fresh fruit, and so the best time to try and spot one is in the fruiting season in the Amazon basin, particularly on the Peruvian side. Number 2. BlackFooted Ferret. Ferrets are cool, there's no getting around it. We all knew somebody as a teenager who had some ferrets running around their house instead of cats. These animals are slippery, super fast, and they absolutely stink when you have one in your home. And while the ferrets you typically see in weird people's houses are plentiful, the black-footed ferret is actually endangered. According to the WWF, there are only around 370 of this type of ferret left in the world. In fact, they were once believed to be completely extinct, but the black-footed ferret is now making a comeback. Throughout the last 30 years, efforts from state and federal agencies, Native American tribes, conservation organisations and zoos have given the black-footed ferret another chance to survive. Recovery efforts have helped boost their population to what it is today, still less than 400, but a lot better than 0. For this reason alone, I highly recommend helping this ferret to recover. If you have the chance, adopt a dozen of them and breed 100 of them. Number 1. Pangolin. I don't care what anyone says, there is nothing on this planet more adorable than a baby pangolin. And yeah, even adult pangolins are pretty cute. However, just like the rest of the animals on this list, they are plummeting into extinction. Pangolins are actually mammals with scales that in theory are supposed to protect them. Like anteaters, they eat ants and termites with their long sticky tongue, which can even be longer than the animal's body. They also hold the title as the most trafficked animal in the world and are treasured among illegal wildlife traders for their scales. What makes this absolutely infuriating is that pangolin scales are pulverized for use in mythical medicines that hold absolutely no value anywhere in the scientific world. Basically, poachers steal the pangolins so they can turn their scales into witch medicine for crazy people. Sorry to say it, but it's true. We need to stick up for these animals. The World Wildlife Fund says that based on reported seizures between 2011 and 2013, an estimated 116,000 to 234,000 pangolins were killed. Seizures represent as little as 10% of the actual volume of pangolins in illegal wildlife trade. But the bizarre story here is how the pangolin is related to the coronavirus outbreak. A lot of people have been talking about bat soup, but the truth is that the coronavirus outbreak could have been transmitted from bats to humans via pangolins. This isn't verified science, and the study isn't even published, but some scientists, according to Fauna and Flora International, the world's oldest conservation charity, are claiming that the pangolin is the most likely intermediate host of the coronavirus. As of now, this is still not proven, it's just a theory. The good news is that in June of this year, China increased protection for the native Chinese pangolin, Manis pentadactyla, to the highest level, so the species can no longer be eaten even in the country itself, and the government will no longer allow the use of pangolin scales in traditional medicine. It's probably because they could be a threat to global health and carry diseases that can possibly be transmitted to humans too. Hopefully it's not too late. Number 10. Melville Range, Australia. 2 hours from Cairns, in the northern part of Australia, lies a dark mountain of boulders that rises up from the rainforest. Known as Cape Melville, the isolated range is barely visited by biologists, and until recently, explorers didn't know what treasures could be found there. A peninsula dominated by the Melville Range, Cape Melville rises from plains of dry forests and is bounded on both sides by the sea. 120 miles south lies a rainforest with an incredible geology that has been unheard of until 1978, when a local Aboriginal man told botanists about it. Describing an unusual palm he found there, the man's discovery, the foxtail palm, later ended up being in high demand for its unique and unusual features that are found only on the boulder fields of Cape Melville. Today, the plant is common along esplanades from Cairns to Florida. Also found only in Cape Melville is another plant known as Cape Melville nightshade, as well as 3 invertebrates, including a snake-eyed skink, a tree frog and a boulder frog that were all discovered there in the late 1990s. In 2013, a group of scientists and researchers were sent along with National Geographic film crew into Cape Melville Mountains to explore, and there they discovered a lost world teeming with undiscovered flora and fauna. The 9-mile range is practically impossible to reach due to its massive granite boulders that shield it from incoming vehicles. Scientists originally believed that there wasn't much to explore there until they used satellite imagery to detect a small rainforest near a large rock outcropping. The crew took a few days to reach the isolated rainforest, and by the time they got there, 3 different invertebrate species had been discovered, with one being estimated at least 1 million years old. A leaf-tailed gecko that only measures about 3 inches in length, with comically large eyes and long legs, was one of the species found there. Its distinctive skin pattern helps to camouflage it. Another lizard species discovered by the team, the skink, is a slender golden-scaled creature that scurries and leaps from boulders. Maybe it's the remote location or the car and house-sized chunks of granite that protect the area that has allowed these previously undiscovered species to survive and thrive there. Whatever the case, it's exciting to realise that there are still undiscovered places holding many secrets to Earth's past. Number 9. SEMA Humboldt, Venezuela. In Venezuela, in the Bolivar state, there is an expansive land with a carpet, a beautiful green forest with very deep holes that have other hidden forests at their very bottom. Discovered in 1961 by a jungle pilot who was flying over the mysterious mountain area, the strange features found in the primeval forest are actually sinkholes, and one is considered the deepest cave in the world. Believed to have been formed as the result of erosion caused by underground rivers, SEMA Humboldt was explored by an expedition in 1974 looking for botanical and scientific evidence of its creation. Because they have walls that are so large that one cannot exit from the bottom, hidden species of plants and animals were able to exist there and do not exist anywhere else on Earth. The sinkholes were later named by one of the participants in the expedition with their names SEMA Major, or Large Sinkhole, and SEMA Minor, or Small Sinkhole. SEMA Major, with a depth of 1,000 feet, or 314 metres, and a volume of 750 million cubic feet, is the largest of the two. Its upper rim is smaller than its base, at about 1,200 feet or 350 metres wide, but at the base, it is about 1,600 feet wide, or 502 metres. Roughly circular in form, various minerals and natural features are found, including stalactites, gypsum, and opal. But the unique features of the sinkholes did not stop there. Locals believe that an evil spirit lives in the jungle-covered sinkhole, known as Tepi. The spirit is believed to live in the cave where it hunts for humans and is often found devouring human flesh. With its remote location and the mystique surrounding it, it makes sense that mythological stories would be told about this wondrous locale in the Venezuelan rainforest. Number 8. East Scotia Ridge. Isolated in the Southern Ocean, there exists water rich with strange and unusual chemicals jetting out from the ocean floor. This environment, though toxic to humans, is called the East Scotia Ridge and is home to many unique and interesting creatures. Just because it is one of the deepest places on Earth doesn't mean life cannot thrive there. In fact, a new type of yeti crab, various new species of barnacles, anemones, and even a white octopus were discovered. Located about 100 miles to the east of the southern tip of South America, the East Scotia Ridge is an area where the seafloor spreads apart and allows molten rock to push upward, building a new crust. The spot where the water percolates to the cracks in the rocks is what attracts these creatures. In 2009 and 2011, researchers used a remote-operated vehicle to explore the ridge, which stretches 1.5 miles or 2.5 kilometers deep. After photographing the area and measuring the temperature, they brought up water for analysis and found it to be rich in chemicals that could support life from both microbes to larger organisms. Explorers believe the crabs and other life found there may feed on the bacteria spewed from the ocean floor. With evidence supporting the discovery of life on East Scotia Ridge that has been isolated for millions of years, researchers believe that the frigid waters around the area are what help to preserve not only this massive hidden spot beneath the water's surface, but also the various creatures that are found there at the bottom of the sea. Do you think that there could be more undiscovered species in deep parts of the ocean rich with strange compounds from inside the Earth? Some of the most bizarre ocean creatures live there, and it is possible that a weird energy source like these vents is causing new and unusual forms of life to thrive. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Of course, while you're at it, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know which place you would like to visit in the comments below. Number 7. Palawan Highlands, Philippines. In the Philippines, an area known as Palawan Island is home to lavish beaches, impressive caves, and wildlife that will take your breath away. A tropical rainforest that was rifted from the Asian mainland 32 million years ago, the Palawan Highlands have a diverse vegetation including beech forests, tropical lowlands, evergreen and semi-deciduous forests. Many groups of animals that are found there are not found anywhere else in the Philippines, including pangolins, porcupines and some insects. Located on the other side of a channel that separates it from Borneo, new species are being discovered there all the time. In 2009, a giant meat-eating plant known as a giant planter was found there. So large that it can catch rats in its leafy trap, the plant is just one new species that was found in the highlands of central Philippines. During the same expedition, botanists found strange pink ferns and blue mushrooms that they hadn't previously identified. Eager to explore the area, botanists set off on a 2-month expedition to scale Mount Victoria and find the exotic plant. Number 6. Bosavi Crater, Papua New Guinea. Mount Bosavi is right in the middle of a lush tropical jungle in Papua New Guinea. Long believed to be an extinct volcano with an enormous crater filled with the rainforest, researchers believe that it could contain a treasure trove of undiscovered species. With 3,200-foot crater walls, animals would have been unable to scale the walls and climb out, leaving them there for thousands of years in isolation. Located in the inaccessible southern highlands, Western scientists have never been able to explore this place until 2009, when a group from the Museum of Natural History in Oxford went there to film an expedition. Flown to a nearby village, researchers took a 4-day trek to the crater where they found rare species including a fruit dove, a pygmy parrot, an incredible hairy caterpillar and a unique jungle spider camouflaged as lichen. Iridescent beetles, unique bats and endangered amphibians were also some of the unique creatures found there. Deep in the remote highlands of the island, Mount Basavi is found on the Great Papayan Plateau, which is part of the Kikori River Basin, located in the Sulawesi Wildlife Management Area. Although not much is known about this area, the locals have detailed stories that tell tales of ash falling from an eruption in 1660 AD. Could this remote natural wonder have been created some 500,000 years ago? The area is inaccessible even to locals, with those in the native Khalsa tribe who live there rarely visiting the area. Its remote location is the very thing that allows its incredible treasure trove of wildlife creatures to thrive. Number 5. Melville Cave, Romania. Cut off from the world for millions of years, Melville Cave in Romania lies in the middle of a desolate field where it has remained isolated for 5.5 million years. Even though no light can travel there and the air is thick with harmful gases, many unique spiders, scorpions, woodlice and centipedes can be found there. It was discovered in 1986 by a group of workers in Romania who were testing the ground to see if it was viable for a power plant. They stumbled across the cave, but because it was in such a treacherous area, less than 100 people have ever been inside it. Those who have been there described their dangerous descent and painted a dark picture. To access the cave, one has to lower themselves by a rope 70 feet down a narrow shaft. The only light there is the one that is on your helmet and illuminates the narrow limestone tunnels that are covered in ochre-coloured clay. In pitch darkness, visitors find themselves in temperatures of nearly 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees Celsius that eventually open into a central cavern that contains a lake. In 2010, microbiologists went into the cave to study the warm sulfuric waters and found unidentified species living there. With only 10% oxygen in the local atmosphere of this cave, visitors can only stay down for 5 or 6 hours before their oxygen levels drop too low and their kidneys start to fail. Once you're there, you must dive into the lake to find your way through narrow underwater passageways where you must squeeze through tiny gaps in the rock to find air pockets to breathe. If you can brave the conditions, you'll find many scuttling and slithering things, including 33 species that are found nowhere else in the world. From spiders to water scorpions and leeches to crustaceans. The animals that live there get their food from the water that drips down from stalactites and stalagmites overhead. Scientists later analysed the water in the cave and found radioactive cesium and strontium, 2 chemicals that were released during the 1986 nuclear accident at Chernobyl. Scientists believe this points to the fact that the waters are not coming from above, but must be coming from somewhere below. These chemicals also tend to erode the limestone, which makes the caves bigger. One can't help but wonder whether this will affect the creatures found there or if it will unearth more that have yet to be found. If anywhere in the world has mutated radioactive creatures, it's this cave in Romania. Do you think it could be true? The place is so isolated, it seems like it might actually be possible. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4. Mount Rarema. In South America, a unique mountain nicknamed the Floating Island juts straight out of the earth. With sheer cliffs that are over 1,300 feet tall and 4 sides that drop off sharply into oblivion, the plateau looks like it has popped out of the ground and floats in mid-air. The geological formation is known as the Tepui, a tabletop mountain of sandstone plateau, which name means House of the Gods. Researchers believe formations like this were created when sand settled and became rock at the bottom of ancient oceans 2 billion years ago. Compared to Mount Everest, which was only formed 60 million years ago, Mount Rarema is ancient. But how did it get its sheer cliffs? Scientists believe that after the sandstone formed, the oceans receded, eroding the sides of the plateau to create a giant shelf that was made of ancient rock. You might think that such a stark location wouldn't have many life forms there, but a 2012 research paper compared the DNA of 4 different tree frog species that were found in similar plateaus around South America. Interestingly, all of the frogs had a common ancestor that lived 5.3 million years ago, which means that there was some way for the creatures to migrate from the mountaintops on their own. But another 35% of the species found on the mountain are native only to that area, including a carnivorous plant known as the pitcher plant that traps insects in its digestive fluids. As researchers continue to explore the area, they are looking at a giant cave hidden within which is believed to have taken tens of billions of years to form, and where they expect to uncover minerals and unique species of animals that have never been seen before. Number 3. Challenger Deep. Nearly 35,000 feet, 11 kilometers below the ocean's surface, Challenger Deep is the deepest known part of the world's oceans. Named after the HMS Challenger, 19th century Royal Navy ship that circumnavigated the globe, Challenger Deep isn't actually a single spot on the ocean floor. It is a localized deep area like a trough, basin or trench, and Challenger Deep is estimated to cover an area of 129,000 miles squared, nearly 4 times as large as Lake Superior. But because of its harsh location, how can we really know that it's that point on Earth? Leave it to James Cameron, Hollywood director of Titanic, to figure it out. Using a custom-built submersible, he visited the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, completing a solo dive to find out. The gap located between tectonic plates stretches 1,500 miles along the western Pacific, the deep chasm that exudes over 15,000 pounds of force per square inch. That's over 1,000 times atmospheric pressure. Cameron's descent lasted 2.5 hours. But why would anyone want to go to the lowest point on Earth? Apparently, the volcanic vents are a great place to identify new species, and finding them allows scientists to continue mapping the ocean floor. Deeper waters are mostly unexplored, and mapping them out would help scientists to find new areas that might contain undiscovered species or even sources of energy, minerals or other resources. Number 2. Sandun Cave. In Vietnam, the world's largest cave, Hang Son Doon, can be found. Inside, a lush jungle grows with water dripping from a ceiling 328 feet above ground level. Birds and macaque monkeys linger in the limestone in a world that looks like it's from a Jurassic Park movie. Found in the heart of UNESCO's Hong Na Ki Bang National Park, Hang Son Doon is one of the most captivating destinations in Southeast Asia. The cave, whose name means the mountain river cave, was first discovered in 1990 by a local farmer who was seeking shelter from the storm in the jungle. After noticing clouds and the sound of an underground river, he explored the large hole in the limestone. After losing his bearings when he returned to share the location with the British Caving Research Association, the location of the Hong Doon Cave would be lost for another 18 years. Luckily, the farmer later stumbled upon the entrance again in 2008, which he shared with researchers who later explored the cave, and in 2010 it was deemed to be the largest ever cave in the world. With heights of 650 feet and stretching 3 miles long, the main cavern is large enough to house an entire New York City block. With an incredibly unique and large ecosystem with its own localized weather system, some of the unique finds inside the cave are rare limestone pearls and the largest stalagmite ever found, stretching 260 feet tall. Foliage can grow in caves through collapsed ceilings known as dolines. The delicate ecosystem, though, is a risk for so many visitors wanting to come to this hidden gem deep in the Vietnamese jungle. A truly pristine environment, Hang Son Doon and its colossal caves are a beautiful example of nature unspoiled. Number 1. Lake Vostok. Antarctica's largest subglacial lake, Lake Vostok, has been isolated from the surface for 15 million years. In 2012, a Russian team drilled a hole 11,000 feet deep down to the lake's surface, where water samples obtained from the hole were said to contain DNA that held unknown bacteria. Another attempt was made by a Russian team of ice explorers who broke through to the lake buried beneath the thick Antarctic ice. One of the largest subglacial lakes in the world, Vostok was once a large surface lake in East Antarctica. Covered with ice for millennia and cut off from light and contact with the atmosphere, it is one of the most extreme environments on Earth and one of the largest lakes in size and volume. First discovered in the 1960s by a Russian geographer who was flying over the area and noticed a large smooth patch of ice above the lake, Lake Vostok is believed to hold many secrets still to be revealed. Using remote sensing techniques including seismic soundings and ice-penetrating radar, scientists believe it is a lot shallower on one end than the other, with the two basins separated by a ridge in the middle. Scientists also believe there could be a hydrothermal vent where tube worms and other oceanic creatures may dwell. After analysing samples taken from the lake, scientists believe that it may be home to a unique ecosystem unlike any other found on planet Earth. Studies of the lake's ice revealed DNA from a variety of organisms that are related to single-celled creatures found in lakes, oceans and streams, but could mimic life on other moons and planets. With conditions similar to Jupiter's Europa, Lake Vostok seems to be thriving despite its harsh conditions. With temperatures in Antarctica colder than anywhere else on Earth, it seems mind-blowing that organisms could find a way to survive here. But more than that, they seem to be thriving in these isolated caves, and it is up to researchers to continue to explore and analyse these subarctic hidden treasures. Number 10. giant sea worm. In October 2018, a pair of divers off New Zealand encountered a giant 26-foot-long translucent glowing worm-like creature. Videographer Steve Hathaway and his friend Andrew Buttle captured footage of the bizarre animal, which Demi Guo likened to a giant windsock in a 2019 National Geographic article. The duo witnessed something called a pyrosome. Large enough for them to swim through, a pyrosome is not actually a worm, but a free-flowing colony of hundreds of thousands of zooids, which are small, multicellular filter-feeding creatures that feast on phytoplankton, animal waste particles, bacteria and other materials. These rapidly growing bioluminescent formations travel vertically to the water's surface at night to feed and are rarely seen. Researchers' knowledge of pyrosomes, including exactly how fast they grow, is pretty limited. Nicknamed sea squirts and cockroaches of the sea, the individual creatures that make up pyrosomes play an important role in tropical waters, where they not only feed but also serve as food for other animals, including turtles and lobsters, who sometimes spend weeks at a time feeding on a pyrosome. Have you ever been diving? Or do you like snorkeling? Let me know in the comments below. Number 9. Mystery Truck. A discovery by two divers back in 2019 may have just brought some closure to the disappearance of a man from 1993. As the story goes, two people were diving in the marina of Hat Rock State Park when they discovered a red pickup truck sitting 20 feet beneath the water. This happened in Oregon State, and the divers found the pickup truck just beyond the dock of an extremely popular recreation spot in Umatilla County. As you can imagine, the divers reported the truck, and the police eventually determined that the truck belonged to a Washington resident who had been reported missing in 1993. That means the truck had been sitting underwater for 26 years. The police even found the wallet and identification of the man who had been missing all those years. Oh yeah, and they found his skeleton inside the truck as well. According to one of the divers, they didn't think much of the truck when they first saw it underwater. It's pretty normal to find random things under the water. The same two divers even found a couple of guns in the water a few weeks before they found the truck. But for whatever reason, the divers memorized the license plate and made an actual effort to report it to the police. Whether anyone will eventually be arrested in connection with the missing person, or if the police will declare it a murder, is yet to be seen. But hopefully his family will have closure. Number 8. Crashed Navy plane. Tyler Stalter is a 34-year-old firefighter who enjoys scuba diving in his free time. What he really enjoys is diving in the water to try and find shipwrecks. He uses a special sonar system to locate wrecks and then checks them out on his own using his diving gear. He has checked out the Monitor, a Civil War ironclad ship that sank in 1863. He also found an Italian liner that crashed into another ship off the coast of Nantucket and sank in 1956. But one of the coolest ones he recently discovered was a Navy plane that crashed off the coast back in 1943. As you can imagine, the bottom of the ocean is littered with airplanes, especially from World War II. When Tyler went out in search of a hidden shipwreck, he was sure surprised when he found a landing gear, a radial engine, and two propeller blades sticking out of the mud. It wasn't a shipwreck. Tyler had discovered an airplane, but it was 200 feet deep and way too difficult to investigate thoroughly. It was dark, and the only way he could see was with a flashlight in his hand. After the dive, Tyler was determined to find out what kind of plane he'd found. But that was tricky. Many planes had crashed into the sea throughout the Pacific Ocean during World War II. His best guess was that the plane was a Dauntless that crashed in 1943. He had to search the records to find more information and was disturbed to find out that the pilots of the crashed plane were never found. He may have not only found a crashed plane, but a graveyard too. Number 7. Man survives in sunken ship. This has to be one of the strangest discoveries ever. It all started when a tugboat sank while towing a Chevron oil tanker through the delta waters of Nigeria. It was one of 3 vessels towing the tanker, but it unexpectedly sank, shocking the crew and giving them little time to get to safety. The waters were rough, and it wasn't until 3 days after the boat sank that divers went down to try and recover the bodies of the crew. By then, everyone had lost all hope. But the divers were absolutely shocked when they found a living man sitting inside the tugboat inside a small air bubble. According to the National Post, he had been sitting down there about 100 feet below the water for an entire 3 days, surviving on nothing but a bottle of Coca-Cola that he had found. The man had been ready to give up hope when he suddenly heard the sound of a boat and then something hammering on the side of his vessel. But he almost missed the divers. They were at the wrong end of the cabin, and the man could barely see their lights. In fact, the divers were almost about to leave. The trapped man had to dive into the water to get the diver's attention. He tapped him on the back of the neck, and the diver screamed, "Corpse! Corpse!" into his microphone. But then, as the man pulled on his hand, the diver realised he had found a living person and began screaming, "He's alive! He's alive!" In the end, they were able to attach the poor man to an oxygen mask and then stick him into a decompression chamber for 60 hours before safely returning him to the surface. He might just have been the luckiest man alive. Number 6. Caged dugongs in Indonesia. You may have seen the disturbing photos a few years ago of the dugongs trapped inside an underwater prison attached to chains. It's such a disturbing image to see that it almost doesn't look real. But this is a very real story. It happened near a remote island in Indonesia. Divers had been swimming innocently enough when they came upon the 2 dugongs, which are some of the most endangered undersea creatures in the world, chained up inside 2 underwater cages. The divers were extremely shocked and upset to see this. They immediately went to find out what was going on, at which point they located a fisherman who had allegedly trapped them as his own personal tourist attraction, charging people money if they wanted to take pictures with the dugongs. This is like somebody trapping you and your mother in a cage and then charging people to take photos of you. It was pretty tragic, and the divers told the fisherman as such. Judging by the sad condition of the animals and the ropes fastened around the mother's tail already making marks, the divers assumed that the mother had been caged for maybe months. They tried to convince the man to let them go, and he said he would, but he didn't. So, when the divers left, they posted the videos of the trapped dugongs all over social media and contacted local authorities. The very next day, the wildlife protection authorities came to the rescue. They found the exact location of the dugongs and set them free. Number 5. Sunken treasure. There is nothing better to find while diving than a sunken treasure. And that's exactly what happened to some Florida divers back in 2015. But the story goes back even further to around 300 years ago, when a ship from a Spanish treasure fleet sunk beneath the water off the coast of Florida. For 300 years, the vessel sat at the bottom of the ocean until 2015, when a family of shipwreck divers discovered a little bit of its cargo. And what they discovered would change their lives. According to Eric Schmidt, one of the divers, him and his family usually excavate empty holes and find nothing except beer cans. However, they stumbled upon an actual sunken treasure a mere 15 feet deep and only about 1,000 feet from the shore. Schmidt had been clearing a patch of sand when gold coins began popping between his fingers. Apparently, he had actually found a buried treasure under the sand at the bottom of the ocean floor. The treasure contained an outstanding 52 gold coins, 40 feet of gold chain, and 110 silver coins. In total, the collection is worth well over $1 million. The treasure came from the Spanish Tierra Firma fleet, which had been hit by a hurricane back in 1715. 11 ships in the fleet had been passing Florida on their way back to Spain with a shipment of gold, and the flagship had been sunk. Ever since the invention of diving, the area where these ships sank has been extremely popular. But how much popularity will it have now with the treasure found? Probably even more. Number 4. Ancient booze. Gold and silver are great, but what about ancient cognac? A group of underwater divers recently salvaged hundreds of bottles of some of the rarest cognac and liqueur in the world, and they discovered it from a ship that had been sunk during World War I by a German U-boat. It took a full week for divers and their unmanned underwater vehicles to haul the entire shipment of booze to the surface from around 250 feet of water in the middle of the Baltic Sea. That is quite the haul. The divers recovered 600 bottles of extremely rare and expensive De Hartmann & Co. cognac and an additional 300 bottles of Benedictine liquor, which you might know better as the current brand name, Bacardi. According to the article from CNN, the divers don't know if the booze is drinkable yet, but you can bet that they are going to find out. They don't even know how much the entire shipment of booze is worth. How do you even get an estimate on such a discovery? The shipment came from a boat known as the Kairos, and it had been on its way from France to Russia when it was stopped by a German submarine in 1917 and destroyed. If that doesn't feel quite old enough for you, think about the fact that in 1917, Russia was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II. This was a long time ago. In fact, it's even believed that the expensive bottles of alcohol could have been meant for the Tsar himself. Number 3. Sea unicorn. A diver by the name of Daniel Botello recently embarked on a North Pole diving adventure with one motive: to locate the legendary unicorn of the sea, otherwise known as the narwhal. These majestic ocean animals are typically super shy around boats and people, and there are very few photographs of them ever taken underwater. However, this solo diver was intent on discovering an underwater unicorn. He was able to do this thanks to his resistance to the cold. Most typical divers can only stand the ice-cold waters of the North Pole for about half an hour at a time, but Botelho was able to stay submerged for at least 3 hours. And it was during one of these 3-hour dives that he finally discovered a narwhal, but it was no normal encounter. It turned out that the narwhal was following him around in the water, and so he managed to get all kinds of really stunning photographs of this elusive creature. A typical narwhal measures about 20 feet in length and weighs upwards of 3,500 pounds, but they are most famous for their long spiral tusk that sticks out of their face. While many people think it's a horn, just like a mythical unicorn, the ivory tusk is actually a single tooth that comes out from the male narwhal's upper lip. Each tooth measures about 9 feet in length, and they are used like jousting sticks between narwhals who are fighting for the rights to mate. They are also used to impress female narwhals. Males attract females by showing off the impressive size of their tusk. At the end of Botelho's underwater adventure, he had lots of photos of the elusive narwhal, and he was also covered in ice burn blisters. He ended up being called back to the boat because it was simply unsafe to stay in such brutally cold conditions any longer. Number 2. Luxury watch. A luxury watch is not as exciting as an entire treasure from a sunken ship, but it's definitely better than nothing. This story comes from Greece, when 2 divers were using a metal detector to search for treasure while on holiday in the Greek islands. The British divers ended up discovering a Breitling watch underneath a rock off the coast of Corfu. It was a total fluke, but the watch could very well earn them several $1,000s. It wasn't even that far underwater. It looks like another swimmer lost it and the watch became lodged underneath a rock. To give you a better idea of how much this watch is worth, a new one is typically valued at around $4,000. While this is definitely a far stretch from $1 million in gold booty, it's still a pretty amazing find for an average tourist with a metal detector. Number 1. Roman shipwreck. A completely random discovery by 2 divers has recently uncovered Israel's biggest underwater find of Roman artifacts in over 3 decades. The treasures were found by 2 divers near the port of Caesarea on the Mediterranean coast. According to a report by CBC News, the divers frequented the same spot several times a month and had never discovered the ancient Roman shipwreck before. It was a freak accident. They first found one sculpture, then another, then they realised they had hit the jackpot. There were all kinds of Roman cargo, from bronze statues to lamps, animal-shaped things and anchors, and even coins embossed with the faces of Constantine and Licinius. After some investigating from professional archaeologists, it is believed that the vessel that all these artifacts were uncovered from was broken and sank off the coast of Israel almost 2,000 years ago. This was around the time that the port of Caesarea, which had once been an important economic hotspot, also sank for unknown reasons. Have you discovered anything incredible while diving? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.